I'm just filling in for the chairperson's role. Could we now open the floor for questions, please? You can direct the questions, be specific, please identify yourself and direct the question to specific panelists, or if you are directing it to all the panelists, please do mention that. Thank you, please.
Known creative theory group for some years and their vibrant discussions. Compared to the angst of theorizing in political theory, we suffer it more. Because in politics, you have something called a government, which cuts across cultures. Economists have economy as this object of study. We are still trying to find an equivalent of society. Do you have any word in Indian languages? Samaj in Hindi, in Tamil, Samuga is not at all society. So I'm just trying to say my reflections come from this kind of a search, which I will share with you. And what I'm responding to is what I heard in this panel. You have deliberations over a very long period of time. I was looking in the points presented by Manindra and all of you for language. You spoke about literature. Where is language and the linguistic diversity itself as a way of cognitive articulation in this discussion of creative theory? Like I told you, there's no equivalent for the word society in which Habermas or your Marx or civil society debates. There are similar debates in Thirukural, in Kambaramayanam, but they don't use the word. Samugam means something else. Now, why? So when we are talking about theorizing and thinking, is the diversity of language and the language in which our thoughts articulated not so not very fundamental? What is the difference between Valmiki Ramayana and Kambaramayan? A.K. Ramanujam has talked about it. So that is my first question. If I had missed it in your presentations, please enlighten me. My second question is, while we are engaging with theory, what does creative theory colloquium mean by theory itself? Because we have philosophizing. I study traditional Indian medicine. There, a distinction is made between tattva, which is philosophy, shastra, which is theory, and vyavahara, which is everyday practice. The first doesn't change in medicine. Theories change, and vyavahara keep changing all the time. So they have a distinction. So what do we mean by theory? Before we answer whether there is something called theory, I think in all your articulations, you mean something different and insightful about theory. Maybe one can engage with that. And lastly and finally, I'm sure the title of the panel is Doing Theory, but would you think given the diversity of your expertise, you would like to restrict yourself only to political theory? That itself is a disciplinary division. So theory, social theory or social science theory will actually fit the kind diversity of your debate more than political theory could be one component of that. This will be my humble submission.
I've got 3 quick points, and then as it was always said, that I'll come back to asking you, Professor Monti, like this. Now, the first one is doing creative theory, social theory, or political theory. Given where we are, temporality is fine, but a spatial location just doesn't allow us the liberty to not accept that there is a concrete reality of power and inequality. Now, using terms like creative, great, gives us a horizon of optimism. But why shed the burden of critique, which has been that power that has allowed us to live on long after we've left the academia? And many of us have made meanings of our life, of our interrogation of structures of power, only because we had the power of critique from whatever we were taught by, the syllabi and the curriculum that Professor Bhanti so lovingly engaged with Professor Ashish Nandi about. So concrete reality, power and inequality retain their centrality. Second that I want to relatedly state is that the power of critique itself is extremely important. Therefore, when you define, I think I belong more to the Dhananjay side of the divide. I am glad that this panel here had a divide. The power of critique is extremely important. Now, why is it important? Even those who were taking us south from citadels of the north, they took us that far but still were in the evolutionary frame. It still required those who were doing more of theory from within Africa, people like Ferguson, talking about depoliticizing development, talking about the kind of things that our course on politics of developing countries, etc., was doing in India here. And you were prefiguring much of what was to appear as critique in much of the global north as coming up from the south. Now that came about because of critique. So I think we are at best at a moment, if I can say, in terms of theorizing, we have the power of critique on our side for sure. And the second thing is that we have an assemblage of concepts that is allowing us to interrogate capitalism far better, and which makes us go back to say, you can read tons of reading on neoliberalism. The ones that make the best sense are the ones that are talking about the critical interrogation of capitalism in its unity of political and economic power wielded in an asymmetric way on the classes that are now the precarious, informal and laboring poor of what is tentatively referred to as the global south. Let's agree to interrogate this. So I'm not willing to, for the sake of calling this creative, leave aside any of the classical political economy terms. And I think the centrality of the critique of capitalism is what allows us to live on. I want to conclude by saying that I'm very glad that Dhananjay introduced the term the national imagination, and especially it's being not one but being many national imaginations. And that allows us therefore to arrive at our tentative positions of assemblage. I don't even call it agreement today. Let this be a plurality of differences, but we arrive at it from our multiple grassroots. And now why is this different? This is different because calling something Indian political theory, that just doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Because if I am able to set up the time experiment to around 1910, 11, 12, 13, when the first print magazines were just about evocatively bringing up things, this wasn't Indian at all. And I think my greatest sense of the national imaginary came through language, poetry. But one young man called Bhagat Singh is writing something as an IA student called My Language and Its Script, Punjabi Bhasha Ani Lipicha Samasya, that gets translated into Marathi. Where do I find this essay? In the Kolhapur University Library that we all know very much, what a role it had to play in the life of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. So I think the many plural pathways that exist in our mufassils and in our provincial locations, does that allow us to come to political theory in its tentative assemblage of concepts? Even if we can't have a theory, we'd be happy to have some way of describing ourselves better in the world that is aggressively capitalist.
That's like saying, parallel question, doing theory, doing math in India is very different from doing math in other Bulgaria or somewhere else. So I wanted to understand what it meant, what the presupposition in your title was, doing theory in India. So I want to say that I am just as a background, I am a theoretical linguist, and I look at the relationship between language and thought, belief, intention, and emotion. So those are the areas that I theorize, and that means, of course, that you have to have a body which you are processing your thoughts through. My question for you is a rather simple one. In almost all theories that I have, discussions about theory that I've come across in India, the people say, we want to go beyond theory, beyond this, beyond that. And this is not surprising because para is a very common word in paribhasha, going beyond and so on. So this, I understand the notion of the other or para is built into the vocabulary or the thought processes in India. I want to ask you a question which relates to say, going beyond X and Y. That's fine. But supposing I were to give you, because I've theorized these things myself, and I believe personally that even in contexts where you don't have universities or large theory houses, you will still have narrative and metaphor as foundational ways of theorizing the world, because narrative is a species of natural theory. You explain things through narrative. So I want to force you to answer a question, and that is to explain without narrative or metaphor. If I gave you give you a forced choice, there are 4 types of, roughly in my understanding, theory. The first category is, let's say, theories which are explanatory, which are traditional physics, chemistry, linguistics, and so on. They have phenomena in the world and they seek to describe the laws behind these theories. And that is a very traditional kind of theorizing. Next, there are elaborative theories which you seek to interpret the world. These kinds of theories are only weakly predictive and they seek to interpret the world. The third type of theory is ecumenical theory, which deals with oughts and is, so legal oughts and shoulds. And those are like legal theories, religious theories, and so on. The fourth type of theory is what I would call emancipatory theory, which political scientists deal with. This is my classification. And emancipatory theories deal with liberation, political moksha is an emancipatory theory, but political theories like freedom of thought, of action, and so on. If I were to give you a forced choice, Indians will say, I have 10 hands, I want to do all of this. But if I were to ask you, which of these categories would individually you want to place yourself in, how would you answer?
You want to answer right now? Just wait. Thank you very much. Yeah, next. Yeah. Then you're clear.
Hi everyone, my name is Sanjum. My question is really simple. Since I think the foreign theories that were discussed, that we are rejecting somewhat, do not get into the caste complexities that are in there in India. And I hate to say it, but I have tried to study the caste complexities through their lens and I hate it. How do you think the creative theory gets into the caste dynamic complexities that are deeply rooted in Indian diaspora? Thank you very much.
So much for the lecture. It was very interesting. I am Aparna. I am associated Women's Studies Center of Jamia Millia Islamia. So while I was listening all this and the concept note also that has been shared with us, so I was thinking doing theory in South Asia, especially a country like India, I think it is more about understanding theory as situated knowledge. And when we think about considering theory as situated knowledge, I think there is a great challenge of imposter syndrome among scholars who are researching marginalized with marginalized communities or within these communities. So, and it is not only about using theories or citing theories, basically Western theories, but it is more about the language of research, the positivist approach, the methodology, and other conceptual things also. So I think when we are doing theory, and especially political theory in India, and that too is creative, I think there's a great challenge how we can think about not only it is about beyond, and when we are doing and rather thinking in terms of sort of including all these kind of situated knowledge, how we can conceptualize this Indian theory or doing Indian theory in a way so that we can also consider situated knowledge as a knowledge that can also help, like Dalit studies or feminist studies. These studies are basically helping, I think, to build this kind of theoretical conception, as Professor Savita also mentioned, that alienation and other kind of creative theories. But how we can also cite Western thinkers, likewise we can also cite thinkers who are Indian thinkers. And then we can think about writing in a way so that the scholar, if it is not autobiographical knowledge, obviously, if shared critical knowledge could also be a theoretical standpoint. So do we have a space to think about this imposter syndrome and how we can build a structure, supportive structure, so that we can also think about these marginalized scholars who are coming from marginalized communities.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, next and then I'll come.
Good evening. I'm Mallikarjun from IIT. Adding to a lot of questions about creativity and creative theory that people are asking, I would just venture to ask if the panel could give an example of how analysis or what is at stake if we use normal theory and versus creative theory, which would just help us show that we can't do without the creative part of creative theory. The second is that what is the theory of human nature that informs the entire theoretical endeavor? Because this would tell us what is the understanding of freedom that one is pursuing. And thirdly, the point that a theory without teleology, which Professor Dhananjay mentioned, I would venture to ask, like, isn't there also an issue that modernity is sort of has put us in a state of this aimless wandering, and there is a lot of fatigue and paralysis that is born out of it, of not having final causes, in fact. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
So, my name is Kartar Kapoor. I'm a student of Comparative Studies and Evolution of History of all sorts, sir. मैं हिंदी इंग्लिश में दोनों बोलना चाहूँगा सर। सबसे पहले मैं ठाकुर जी से मुखातिब हूँ। उन्होंने borrowed concept की बात की। सब concept is good for all, good for everything. तो उसको reject करने का कोई सवाल नहीं उठता. We should accept it. दूसरी बात जो आपने बहुत अहम कही, वो कही common ethos of humanity. It is very touching to me, sir. The common ethos of humanity कभी भी completely हो सकता है. यूनिवर्सल ट्राइबल आदिवासी ethos और common ethos of आदिवासी वर्ड ओवर को हम कंसिडर नहीं करते, जिसको सारे स्कॉलर, सारे फिलोसफर, सारी यूनिवर्सिटीज कोई भी इसको टेकअप नहीं कर रहा, जिसको इट्स वेरी सब्जेक्टिव, वेरी डियर टू मी. ethos आर ह्यूमन ethos आर आदिवासी ethos. वी स्टार्टेड फ्रॉम आदिवासी से हमारा शुरुआत हुआ है, यहाँ तक पहुँचे हैं, उनकी हम बात ही नहीं करते. तो दूसरी बात मैं आपसे ये कहना चाहूँगा सर जी, क्या मीडिया के बिना हम चल सकते हैं? मीडिया मासिस को कंट्रोल करता है, और मीडिया को कौन कंट्रोल करता है? हम यहाँ बैठ के क्या कर रहे हैं? जो कुछ भी हम करेंगे मीडिया उसको नलिफाई कर देता है. मीडिया इज कंट्रोलिंग द माइंड्स ऑफ द पीपल, राइट? एंड हु कंट्रोल्स द माइंड? मीडिया. सो एवरीथिंग इज ऑफ. तो दैट इज देयर. दूसरी बात, सविता जी ने एक बात कही, पॉवर्टी ऑफ पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी. हाउ टू बी फ्री? मैं तो फ्रीडम का क्या मतलब है? जब जेब में पैसा नहीं है, काहे की फ्रीडम? काहे की थ्योरी? किस बात की? मेरी जेब में, जिनकी जेब में पैसा है वो ठीक है, उनकी फ्रीडम है. आई से नो फ्रीडम इज कंप्लीट विदाउट पैसा थ्योरी. पैसा का जब तक जेब में पैसा नहीं है, पैसे की फ्रीडम नहीं है, तो किसी को भी फ्रीडम कंप्लीट नहीं है. लोगों को पैसा दो, उनको फ्रीडम नहीं चाहिए. उनको खाना चाहिए, उनको घूमना चाहिए, उनको ऐश चाहिए, उनको दुनिया में जाना चाहिए, उनको यूनिवर्सिटी जाना है. बिना पैसे के कुछ नहीं मिलता.
Thank you.
But my last to be, सर जज सर ने यहाँ से कहा है कि the recovery, लाल जी, you don't want to be, blown off by my feet, sir, blown off my feet. गांधी जी ने कहा blown off, I don't want to be blown off my feet. they let the culture go from one side, come to my window and pass through my door. Sir, it's a global village, mate. How can you be on your feet? There's a wind blowing for all directions, from all sorts. You cannot be on your feet. This is old concept. Gandhi is great, right? I respect him. But जैसा नहीं वो बड़ा आदमी है तो उसने कह दिया तो हम उसको एक्सेप्ट करें. हमारे में हिम्मत होनी चाहिए कहने. We can't remain on our feet. We have to be blown up. Thank you.
Where does this start?
All right, diverse questions, very, very different kinds of questions have been asked. I think what we are trying to do was creative theory at one level. Perhaps it was too abstract. I can understand that theorizing, no matter how skeptical you get at the level of theory, this abstract level is what resolves our questions, theoretical questions. So, theory, the creative theory that we are doing is a very complex kind of exercise. Somebody asked 4 types of exercises of theories that one does. In creative theory, we accept all these theories. They're all part of our consideration, and I would say that there is a totality to which we are wedded. But how level that is also invoked, it is very, very important aspect, layer of our theory. Manindra in the beginning has mentioned that we take literature very seriously, we take literature as our archives. We don't take so much, so we as creative theorists, we want to lean on literature very, very much and less on our social sciences, because for a very long time they have been replicative, and in that sense they have not generated the kind of knowledge we need to go further. So it is a complex task, and I don't think we disregard in any sense theoretical practices that are exercised in other disciplines. Sujata was talking about medicine. Sujata, you know, you've been part of creative theory. We have also invited you to speak. You are not excluded. Every time we invite you, and we take it very seriously, whatever you are presenting. So it's all under consideration. What creative theory specifically does is that it wants to go further. It wants to create new ideas. It wants to transform the things that we already know, and we don't devalue what we know, but we want to create more, something very specific to our own context, our own philosophies. Like let me tell you this, that we do want to go out of that phase of Manuvad, where things are defined for you, the things are given to you as structures within which you have to function. We want to go beyond that. We want to come into our modern self in such a way that we are not even conditioned by modernity and its rationality to that extent. So it is this. It's a very complex thing that we're doing. Perhaps it is not making sense to you all right now. And we spoke only for 15-17 minutes in which we tried to explain what we're doing. The very fact that we are seeking an ontological thematization, it's a very, very difficult and important task. And we are not answerable only to this group. We are working with international philosophers and theorists, and we sort of discuss these matters even there. And these concepts are tested, they're challenged. We want to have challenges so that we sort of progress. So this is what we're doing. It's a kind of we are in a theoretically vulnerable position, but we are strong. Thank you.
Thank you. Hilal.
Yeah, thank you very much. It would be interesting to theorize this event itself and look at the presentation as well as the questions which you get. Usually, and this is my experience over the years, I get 3 types of questions. No question about what I say what I do. Rather, 3 types of questions. So the first question is technical professional. Who said what when type. इसमें वो कहाँ है, वो कहाँ है, वो कहाँ है. वो वाला आदमी क्यों नहीं गिराया आपने? That's one. The second is, which I call FAQ types. The madam's question was like that. She gave us 4 options. Now, अरे हम SIR में भी 4 option पे नहीं जा रहे हैं. There is a long debate. So don't give us options. Take what we have presented. We worked hard on that. And then it will be next to impossible to, you are saying that either yes or no. How would I say yes or no? This is absolutely absurd. Now the final type of questions which we get are not basically alternative papers. Because people would actually, and we come from a very talkative society, which is our strength as well as weakness, and that's my famous example, that's maybe the reason why from Mahatma Buddha to Mahatma Gandhi, everyone say, chup raho. We speak a lot, but I think it would be better. So instead of answering, the questions which are raised, most of the questions were basically comments. So how should I respond to the comments? I take it, and I'm personally very disappointed. Thank you.
Okay. Dhananjay.
The intended meaning and extended meaning both are very important for us, I think. And collective theory is a collective pursuit in which experiential epistemology along with the various forms of epistemology or empathetic epistemologies are going to play very, very important. And I think teleological, I use that, telos have become very important in contemporary time. And I don't think telos have origin in modernity and modern time. They are pre-modernity also. I mean, look at the caste structure, very much teleological. I mean, or any structure which is getting sanctioned from theological positions. I mean, so I think in that sense that if creativity is not countering teleological or theological subsumptions, that there's a limit to human expression, that is bad in itself. So whether it is theological or whether it's capitalism, both are constraining factor in terms of defining creative theory or human creativity per se. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm not. I want to agree with Hilal. I think I really received wonderful questions, and let me try to address them one by one.
There are questions. Not true that there are no questions.
Like this question of theory and political theory, Sujata. I think we have been debating about this, and in this group probably we do not think that we are political theorists that way. It's creative theory is reflecting on political theory, but we are talking of theory in general. We are talking of theory in terms of understanding our reality, and we think that, as Dhananjay said, that all human beings are theory-making beings in a vague, in a very vague term, may not be very defined term, and probably in different linguistic communities, we have done it differently. Like for instance, I give you an example from Mahabharata. Just before the war, Dhritarashtra calls Vidur, and asks him why there is a war. And he says, because you have done injustice. He said, what is justice? He said, something that you don't want for yourself, you should not do it for others. I think it's a very theoretical statement. So maybe all such things are embedded in the narratives. So how do we make sense of ourselves, and how do we think of doing things, what you said, how do we move from tattva to vyavhara? And vyavhara could be different, but how do we also move from vyavhara to the tattva? This to and fro movement probably is the theoretical process that we are involved. The other question you talked about is the language and the category, and that is the struggle. That is where we think, and this CTC we are planning to work on and actually develop an idea how to deal with this issue. For instance, there is one session on Shram, labor and mazdoor. These are three different categories and they have three different meanings. So what words should we use? What concept should we use? This is not a simple choice. I'm sure it has to be a very informed choice. So probably this is in India particularly, and that's Rukmini Bhai, that in India particularly doing theory would mean dealing with this complexity of multiple language, multiple experiences, multiple communities. For instance, tribal communities, multiple languages. They also, one of my students has worked on Urao as an epistemic community. How do they make sense of the world? So probably that is a struggle that we have to get involved in, and that is a struggle of doing theory in India. Manisha, I think when we say creative, that doesn't mean that we are creating a binary between creative and critical. I'm only suggesting that being critical is extremely important. That gives us the ground for thinking something new, going beyond probably is our concern all the time, going beyond what is available, creating something new that can give us better understanding of things, both explanation and maybe a perspective, what to do next, where to go from there. Only being critical, for instance, capitalism. We have been critical to capitalism. The question is, what are the alternatives now? No matter how much critique we are giving, finally we are reduced to China fact. There is no alternative, therefore we are moving with this. A thinker like Gandhi gave a critique and simultaneously gave an alternative. Not alternative to something, but a new model, which could be a more human model, which could be a model that can make the world better. For instance, we are working on several such experiments at the grassroots level. What are the new ways of organizing our relation with nature people are experimenting with? For instance, there is a Mondragon experiment, which is a wonderful experiment. We are trying to see what could be done there. So critical is definitely there. On the global south thing, I have a question. This idea of global south, no matter how much we assert, it remains alternative to global north. So north is powerful, south is not powerful, therefore we are asserting. I want to get rid of that psychology. And this is a psychology that doesn't allow me to think at the global level. So I would think of a theory that can explain the problems of US or European world also. And we can think of a larger model which could be applicable everywhere. So the global south has an inherent understanding that we are inferior, we are asserting. So this is what Hilal calls the victimhood psychology. I want to get rid of that psychology because that limits my thought process. Rukmini, I think this is an excellent categorization, 4 ways of doing theory, and a difficult choice. But if you push me very hard that you have to take one of them, then I will take the last one. The last one, the emancipatory theory. The purpose of our theory is to work out a model, think how do we...
Once you do that, once you make that choice, you realize
Okay.
the limitations of taking a position. I mean, at all. In that way.
Right, we will discuss. I think please do come for our colloquium. In the first session itself, we will have very interesting debate. Gopal, Guru and Peter have agreed. And I have read your book, an excellent collection of those concepts from Indian tradition. All right, so I think that would be really interesting if you also come and participate in that discussion. So I would say that creative theory is about struggle for a better world. And therefore the last point I made was that we have to struggle for a new utopia so that people get energy. But 2 more minutes. Okay. Just 2 more minutes.
8 o'clock already, but a few more.
Can you give me 2 more minutes? Just, or at least, I think what is human nature? That's a big debate that we would like to enter. And I think, this is one of my favorite topics these days, that if we want to do theory, we probably have to begin from human nature. A lot of friends say that that's not needed, but I think that's needed. Now, I take this Purusharth model, Purusharth and Vikar together, as a wonderful model which can help us in theorizing a lot of things. So that would be my answer to you. And the borrowed concept, I don't think borrowing any concept has a problem, but when we are borrowing, we have to really know why are we borrowing. So as I said, all resources produced by every human being is a collective resource of humanity. From there, we have to extract things for ourselves, for our struggle, for the next 100 years, how do we think about our world? That's the role of a theory. Thank you very much.
Thank you.